Season's greetings, folks. Welcome to the Jack Reviews Musicals Christmas Special. I've got my office decorated while sipping on a cup of hot chocolate, wearing my cold weather flannel and my Santa hat. I'm jingling all the way with this one, celebrating the holidays. This will be the final episode of Jack Reviews Musicals of 2024 as I finally take a break from all of the hustle and bustle that I have had to experience in 2024. But if this is your first time seeing my face and don't know what this show is, my name is Jack and I'm a musical theater superfan based in St. Louis, Missouri. And on this YouTube channel, I share my thoughts on all of the musical productions that I go out to see. And this episode is extra special because it is a double feature. The first show I'll be covering is A Christmas Carol, the Remix, presented by the St. Louis Shakespeare Festival at the ZACK Theater from November 26th through December 22nd of 2024. Number 2 is A Million Dollar Quartet Christmas, a co-production with the Repertory Theatre of St. Louis and Stages St. Louis, presented at the Loretto-Hilton Theater at Webster University from December 4th through the 22nd of 2024. Starting with A Christmas Carol, the Remix, this show is, I'll be honest, a very interesting specimen. So this is a hip-hop retelling of the classic story by Charles Dickens, the perennial, timeless classic that everybody knows. But it's not a run-of-the-mill hip-hop adaptation. No, this was created by the Q brothers. They were the same people who created The Comedy of Errors, which is an obscure cult musical that is also a modern hip-hop retelling of William Shakespeare's The Comedy of Errors. And this is something that the Q brothers specialize in. They take Shakespeare plays and classic stories and create hip-hop adaptations of them that can be watched by kids and families. In the process of adaptation, the Q brothers keep the characters and the story and remix everything else to fit the hip-hop style. My first exposure to the Q brothers was at the very start of 2020, right before COVID hit, where I saw the St. Louis Shakespeare Festival's production of the Q brothers musical Dress the Part, which is their version of Shakespeare's The Two Gentlemen of Verona, where all of the characters are literally played by just two gentlemen. And I really enjoyed that show quite a bit. I have really fond memories of going out to see that, this moment of reverie before the world fell apart. Now, I saw Dress the Part way before I started Jack Reviews Musicals, so I went to my public Facebook to do a quick blurb about what I thought of the show after I saw it. And I said that Dress the Part was a summation of everything that I loved about musical theater. It was over the top. It was high energy camp, making no pretense of trying to be this well-made play with a fourth wall to be built between the story and the audience, with disbelief to be suspended. But at the same time, it was also literary in its lyrics, on par with Lin-Manuel Miranda. It cleverly milked a lot of humor from the fact that these dozen characters are being played by two men. And the songs were legitimately good pieces of family-oriented hip-hop. Much of the same can be said for A Christmas Carol, the Remix, except it has a cast of 4 playing all of the characters, and it also has a touch more heart to it. I mean, it's A Christmas Carol, what are you expecting? Now, this right here is the second time that the St. Louis Shakespeare Festival is presenting A Christmas Carol, the Remix. The first time was last year, but I didn't do a review of it because I couldn't see it, due to my body doing a thing called feeling like total garbage. It's a perfectly normal thing, it happens to everybody. Now, that showing was very well received by its target audience. So much so that it was brought back in 2024 by popular demand. There's even talks of having the St. Louis Shakespeare Festival present this as a yearly holiday tradition. Kind of a remix of other theaters that present A Christmas Carol every December, and after I finally saw it, I can kind of see why. This is not a straightforward adaptation of A Christmas Carol. For one thing, this production sets the story in modern-day St. Louis. The set for this production was designed by William Attaway, and it transforms the entirety of the ZACK Black Box Theater into a street in St. Louis, literally at the crossroads of hip-hop and Dickens, a street sign that literally makes that distinction. There's a set piece on the back wall of the theater where it's the St. Louis skyline just covered in glitter. There are brick walls covered in street art that extend into the theater walls as well. And the lighting design by Jesse Klug engulfs the theater in festive Christmas lights, including string lights that overhang the columns and over the ceiling, on the walls. The overall aesthetic feels like we are immersed inside of the cover art for a children's hip-hop holiday album. Ebenezer Scrooge, instead of saying "bah humbug," says "Chris my assmas," a nice modern remixing that immediately sets us on edge. And the show also makes it much more of a point to show how much joy he gets from the misery of other people, including taunting the chorus of children who start the show. The kids rap to us about how excited they are for Christmas, even taking the time during the opening number to deliver some pretty biting verses that comment on how much Christmas has been robbed of its meaning, particularly by conservative fundamentalists. Something that Charles Dickens actually writes about in A Christmas Carol. Nice way of honoring the source material. Scrooge has an Amazon Alexa-style home security system that he talks to and considers his only friend, and he sleeps with a cartoonish bag of money as a pillow, which is a great sight gag for kids. And all of the ghosts in this adaptation are references to hip-hop acts throughout history. The ghost of Jacob Marley, for instance, is punished in the afterlife by taking the form of Bob Marley, because Jacob despises reggae music, so now he has to take the form of the thing that he despises most as punishment for his misspent life. He's even accompanied by 2 backup dancers, so now instead of Bob Marley and the Wailers, it's Jacob Marley and the Jailers. The Ghost of Christmas Past is an old-school hip-hop rapper on par with the Sugar Hill Gang and Run DMC. The Ghost of Christmas Present is an homage to modern hip-hop acts like Pharrell Williams and Tyler the Creator. And the Ghost of Christmas Future is actually a trio of breakdancers, using their dance moves to push around Scrooge like a rag doll and tangling them up inside of him, so that way he has no other choice but to stay stock still and face the consequences of his actions. And there were really interesting story elements crafted by the Q brothers that I haven't seen in any adaptation of A Christmas Carol. Or if I have, they're very rare. The 2 beggars at the start of the story who ask Scrooge to give alms for the poor are Jewish, which gives credence to the story's central theme that charity and kindness can come from all walks of life. The past sequence expands upon Ebenezer Scrooge's childhood friends. The characters they create here are Chuz and Pip, who are actually characters from other Charles Dickens novels. Chuz and Pip act as contrast to Scrooge, where they are out there living their life to the fullest and leaving Scrooge to clench his fist at the grindstone, working as an accountant for Fezzies, Wigs, and Weaves, which is a hilarious play on words, and a really nice way to acknowledge how the actors in this production switch between characters. And during the future sequence, the 2 of them come back as very old men, and we see them how much they have enjoyed their lives, but Scrooge was just miserable, and it just made them very sad. It was a really nice way of making Scrooge feel much more like a 3-dimensional character. During the past sequence, there's an extended musical moment where Scrooge meets Marley as a much younger man, and so a musical tug-of-war plays out between Marley and Scrooge's fiancée, Belle, with Scrooge trying to decide which of these people are better for his career. This tug-of-war is represented by Marley and Belle being played by the same actor, pulled off masterfully by actor Victor Musoni. And during the past sequence, the Q brothers even take Dick Wilkinson, an extremely minor character in A Christmas Carol, who only appeared in like half a page, and expanded his role to become a genuine work friend of Scrooge. And when we finally see the moment where Scrooge decides to choose money over his friends, it makes that moment so much more heartbreaking. But what was so emotionally devastating in this show was the presence of Lil Tim, this story's version of Tiny Tim. The ghost of Christmas future reveals to Scrooge that he is going to be directly responsible for Lil Tim's death, because the present sequence before comically reveals that Lil Tim has every disease known to man. And it's during the future sequence that Scrooge makes his plea to the ghost of Christmas future in a way that is modified from the novel. Scrooge reasons he died living a life of cruelty and greed, so because of that, he deserves to die. And he begs to the ghost, pleading that if Scrooge stays dead, Lil Tim should still live. And not just live, but be happy and full of life. And it's this admission that he would sacrifice his own privilege and would rather end his life than see somebody else lesser than him suffer. That is what makes him get his second chance. It was probably the best version of Scrooge's bargaining with the ghost of Christmas future that I have seen in any Christmas Carol adaptation. And it's not just because of the way the moment was written, and not because of the truly stark lighting by Jesse Klug, but also because of the utterly committed performance by Ryan Armstrong as Scrooge. If there was one gripe that I have with the material, it would be the bits that were very obviously geared towards kids. There's an extended sequence where an unseen character burps for an entire minute on stage, which felt like an eternity, especially because the humor came from how uncomfortable everybody else was, which in turn made the audience uncomfortable. And Scrooge, during his dance of redemption at the end, starts twerking, and it's really bad twerking, the only kind that an old white man can muster, and it just felt really forced. But moments like that don't ruin the show for me, because everything else about it was just so intelligent. It honestly gave me new insights into A Christmas Carol that I've never had before. And what engaged me from beginning to end were the performances by this high-octane cast, directed and choreographed by Steph Paul. She kept the movement bouncy, the actors intensely sincere, and the atmosphere just good old-fashioned festive fun. Of course, we have Ryan Armstrong's fantastic performance as Scrooge, who starts the show reveling in misfortune and then goes through a roller coaster of emotions until the ending, where Armstrong makes palpable Scrooge's desperation and genuine remorse for all of the bad he's caused. Assistant choreographer Victor Musoni gets a virtuoso performance as both Marley and Belle, as well as the Ghost of Christmas Present and Lil Tim. Maya Vince Prentice shows her versatility as Scrooge's beleaguered employee Bob Cratchit, as well as Bob's daughter Martha, the first in the Cratchit family to go to college, a fact that figures into Scrooge's redemption. And Prentice also serves up some old school funky fresh rhymes as the Ghost of Christmas Past. Mo Shipley probably gave the second most energetic performance in the whole show after Scrooge. The roles that they play are Scrooge's nephew Fred, Bob Cratchit's wife Emily, and Scrooge's work friend Dick Wilkinson. It's worth mentioning that Fred's buoyancy and genuine holiday spirit gets Scrooge to remember his love for Fred's late mother, Scrooge's sister Franny, whose role in the story is expanded much more here than in the novel. The actors were absolutely wonderful at switching between characters on a dime, not just through their performances, but also through the costumes by Erica McClellan. Every costume piece and wig was distinct. You never have a hard time telling who is who in what moment. And the beats were hoppin', courtesy of musical director Mel Beatty, also known as DJ Stink, working with sound designer Steven Tasek to keep the audio quality nice and smooth in the very acoustically unforgiving ZACK Theater. I was really surprised by A Christmas Carol the Remix. This was a legitimately transformative adaptation of A Christmas Carol that I think not only kids will love, but also fans of the original story and of Charles Dickens' works. The music is great, the performances were full of energy, energy, the vibes are festive and fun, and the story is so universally touching. If there are rumblings of making this a holiday tradition, I want to see the St. Louis Shakespeare Festival following through, because this is a wonderful alternative to theaters that present A Christmas Carol with much more basic stagings. This is the holiday-themed sequel to the jukebox musical Million Dollar Quartet, which Stages St. Louis presented last year. You can read my review of that production on jackreviewsmusicals.com, but just know that it was one of the top 10 best shows that I have seen that year. And so I had high hopes for this, especially because this production is the first of its kind. Stages St. Louis wanted to perform this for their 2024 season, but as a business, they only operate between the late spring to early autumn. So instead what they did was they got together with the Repertory Theatre of St. Louis and they presented Stages' production as part of the Rep's 2024-2025 theater season. Stages even got most of their show's original cast and creative team to be a part of this. That aspect, combined with this production being the first show I have seen at the Loretto-Hilton Theater since the pandemic, the experience of watching this felt to me like a homecoming. And it was a fantastic way to wrap up 2024. The time is December 4th, 1956, and the place is Sun Records in Memphis, Tennessee. Record producer Sam Phillips, the father of modern rock and roll, brought together purely by chance Elvis Presley, Johnny Cash, Carl Perkins, and Jerry Lee Lewis, all in the same room to have a jam session. One of the greatest and most consequential in rock music history. The first Million Dollar Quartet show explores the reasons why Sam Phillips brought them all together in the first place, and the sequel explores what happened after. The sequel starts right where the first show ended, with Sam Phillips shooting the iconic photograph that put the Million Dollar Quartet on the front page of every major newspaper in America. And then afterwards, the quartet just kept on jamming, but this time they not only perform rockabilly Christmas songs, Jingle Bell Rock, Santa Baby, Rockin' Around the Christmas Tree, Blue Christmas, but we also get big hits from the artists' other repertoires that were not seen in the first show. Elvis Presley gets Don't Be Cruel, Johnny Cash gets Ring of Fire, Carl Perkins gets Cotton Top, and Jerry Lee Lewis gets Chantilly Lace. And all the while, Sam Phillips, the artist, and Elvis's girlfriend, Diane, they all keep spirits merry and bright by decorating the studio, they exchange presents, and they share stories of Christmases past, all the while celebrating what the future holds for them after this session is through. But much like the Christmas Carol remix, there is a gripe that I have with this show, and it's that the first show has the characters negotiating contracts that end with them leaving Sun Records, even though they are some of the company's biggest stars. And throughout the show, Phillips becomes increasingly bitter about this, until in Act 2 we get the obligatory third act friendship failure that forces everyone to kiss and make up, 'cause it's Christmas. That plot point, much like the humor in the Christmas Carol remix, felt very contrived, and it almost kind of throws away the character development that Phillips displayed in the first show, when he was making those compromises in the first place. However, what we do get from this is the expanded role of Elvis's girlfriend, Diane. She's a chanteuse who also gets to perform some really fun hit songs and have some fun with the boys. And this depth is strongly felt by the passionate performance given by Shelby Ringdahl. Sam Phillips, as whiny as he was at times in this show, is still portrayed wonderfully by Jeff Cummings, interpreting him as the kind of guy who can walk the walk and talk the talk in the music industry, full of wisdom and experience shining through in every breath that he takes. All of the performers in this production are at the peak of their powers. They're great actors, they're great movers, and they're great musicians. All of them were whipped into shape by director and choreographer Keith Andrews, and the musical direction by David Dave Sonneborn aces that distinct rockabilly sound. And he conducts the performers while playing the drums, portraying legendary percussionist Flew Collin, alongside Chuck Zayas as Jay Perkins, Carl Perkins' older brother, accompanying them on the upright bass. And both Sonneborn and Zayas together get to perform some killer twirls, runs, and fills throughout the show. And the Million Dollar Quartet themselves felt so good to see live again, even though one of them is a replacement. Instead of being played by Edward Liccardo, Elvis Presley in this show is played by Sean Buckley, a veteran who has played Elvis in regional productions of Million Dollar Quartet all over the country. And he feels like a seasoned professional. He nails Elvis's vocal idiosyncrasies and making his gyrating dance moves feel vital. Scott Moreau as Johnny Cash, I could honestly listen to all day. His bass voice scratches an itch in my brain that is just so satisfying to listen to. It really does feel like you are seeing Johnny Cash in the flesh, even down to the way he handles his guitar. I have absolutely no idea how he does that, because whenever I do it, it's impossible. Though that may be because I'm only trying to do it with a ukulele. Jeremy Savelovitz as Carl Perkins is an electric guitar virtuoso, getting to show off an excellent guitar solo in Cotton Top that earned a stellar ovation from the audience. And Savelovitz also succeeds in making Perkins feel the most down-to-earth out of the quartet, the one who feels like the most stereotypical Southern good old boy. That was really charming to watch. Brady Wees as Jerry Lee Lewis. I have absolutely no idea how this man can summon the same amount of energy to play this character here than he did in the previous production. Wees portrays Jerry Lee like an absolute unhinged madman, full of bravado and swagger and pounding the piano like a feral cat in heat. He was an absolute blast to watch on that stage. He actually kind of makes Jerry Lee Lewis a dream role for me, even though I'm at the age now where I can't possibly play him. The visual design perfectly translates the aesthetic of the stage's production into the Loretto-Hilton Theater, which is a markedly different space from the Kirkwood Performing Arts Center. For one thing, the K-PAC is a traditional proscenium theater, whereas the Loretto-Hilton is a 3/4 thrust, with the audience sitting on 3 sides of the stage. But set designer Adam Koch still managed to transform this space into a fully functional studio, complete with soundproofing on the walls and stacks of vinyl records. Costume designer Brad Musgrove and wig designer Dennis Malambenzi perfectly recreate the quartet's iconic looks and make the other characters feel like they were ripped right out of the history books. The Lights by Sean M. Savoy makes this show feel like a classic rock concert, with Ring of Fire probably being my favorite moment of lighting as staging, and the addition of Christmas lights that are, again, controlled effortlessly. And the sound design by Beef Gratz is so full of punch, making these classic rock songs feel like classic rock. And that's the whole vibe of a Million Dollar Quartet Christmas. It's classic. It's a celebration of not just classic Christmas rock, but the history of classic rock as a whole. Like, the Million Dollar Quartet was an extremely important moment in rock history that not enough people pay attention to. And I am very happy that St. Louis has gotten exposure to this landmark achievement in the last 2 years with these truly fantastic productions. One of these coming from a collaboration between 2 theaters, something that I hope more theaters in St. Louis are encouraged to do in the future. When I was walking out of the theater, I heard audience members saying that this should be a yearly tradition like the Christmas Carol remix. Though personally, I'm of the opinion Million Dollar Quartet should be a St. Louis theater staple, because it is a show that is way too good to be as underrated as it is. Let me know in the comments below if you have seen either of these shows and what you thought about them. And while you're at it, be sure to check out my website, jackreviewsmusicals.com, to read my back catalog of written reviews. The time has come now to wrap up the Jack Reviews Musicals Holiday Special. I hope you enjoyed. Be sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel so that you do not miss any more St. Louis musical theater reviews coming not very soon, but soon-ish. This is the last episode of Jack Reviews Musicals in 2024, but my content does not end there. I will still be continuing Waitress Wednesday with a new episode coming tomorrow, Christmas Day. And my next episode of Jack Reviews Musicals will be towards the end of February, where I actually start the year off with a 2024 year in review. Yes, I am taking some time off after this so that I can properly reflect on 2024 and to find out what were the best shows objectively that I saw this year, and also induct new members into the Jack Reviews Musicals Hall of Fame. I am very much looking forward to seeing you then, but until next time, thank you so much for watching, and long live the musical, and I hope that you all have a very merry musical Christmas.